Hey there! I'm going to talk about the tools that I use as a data scientist at work. I used it throughout the 3 companies that I've worked in so far as a product data scientist, which means that I'm working close to the product development teams and helping them to understand the performance of the features that they're building. If you want to know more about this, check out the video linked above. The tools will be split on tech and data tools, more like work presentation tools and the organizational tools. Some of them are pretty important and crucial to try out before you start your work as a data scientist. Some of them are just things that you will learn on the job. There are some that probably will be very specific to your workplace, so you don't really need to worry about it. But a lot of them actually take some time to get used to, so it's not only the new job, new people, new tasks that you will have to adapt to, but also new different tools in the company that you will join. First and foremost, let's talk about the techie data tools. To access the data, you will need several different types of tools depending how the data is stored in your company. In most companies, it's stored in the cloud, either in Google Cloud Platform or Amazon Web Services, or some companies use Microsoft Azure. Some companies have their internal databases, so you will have to learn how to access them there, and probably the ways to do that will be pretty specific. I definitely recommend you to try out BigQuery and Google Cloud Platform. You can do it for free if you have a Google account, like a Gmail account. You can create their projects where you can upload datasets, try querying the datasets through the BigQuery web interface, try using the command line interface, which is super important as well. Just be careful that the amount of queries that you run and the datasets that you have there are not too big, because I think you have only up to $200 a month of free quota, and after that you will have to start paying for them. So if you spin up any virtual machine instances or run very heavy queries, just be wary that you might have to pay to Google. Otherwise, it's free to use and super useful and super valuable for your own personal projects, or to do your assignments for the interviews, like a take-home assignments for the interviews, or just to try out what your kind of work as a data scientist will look like. So BigQuery, command line interface, and UI, very important. Use it all the time, very often. The UI I usually use to run like ad hoc queries or test something out or check what datasets are available and what fields they have. The command line interface is more commonly used to schedule different SQL jobs, different pipelines that organize data in a certain way. You will still have to probably do that because you'll probably build some data sets and they need to be rebuilt or renewed on a certain basis, daily, monthly, weekly, whatever. So definitely get familiar with that as well. On the same note, other services like AWS or Azure or other cloud services for storing the data can be very valuable. Personally, I don't know whether there is a free access to them, but if there is, then it's definitely a good idea to check them out as well, or instead of BigQuery. Second type of data tools is kind of data mangling analytic tools, and those are the ones that include knowledge of programming languages, so Python, R, or other programming languages that may be used in your company. I primarily use Python, and in that case I use mostly Jupyter notebooks to use Python to analyze the data. JupyterLab is also quite widely used in the companies. Most companies have their own Jupyter servers, so you don't have to have a local instance of a Jupyter notebook. You can have it available on the server, and then there will be a team most likely updating the latest libraries or latest new features that are available, so you don't have to do it on your own. But it's also a good idea to try out having or running a Jupyter notebook or JupyterLab instance on your own computer, just to find out how many different libraries you need to download, just to try it out and, you know, have an experience working in this environment. Most of my work is done through Jupyter Notebook or JupyterLab, but also quite a big part of my work is done in other IDEs where I have a local instance of. So I mostly use Sublime and Xcode because Sublime is just very easy kind of text editor with some advanced nice features, and I use it sometimes for writing notes, sometimes for actually opening up the code, sometimes for saving some intermediate queries, just like very ad hoc. It's very easy to use, and it saves your documents without you having to save them. So even if your laptop crashes, usually Sublime just opens up with everything that you had open, which is really good. Xcode I use because I have to download it on Mac to be able to run certain programs and to be able to contribute to different development pipelines. I mean, I could use Intellij or iTerm as well, but Xcode is already there and it's pretty heavy, so I just use it anyway. This tool I use mostly to contribute to different development pipelines, data pipelines, or software that's built in the company that multiple people built and then kind of store the code in GitHub and run it there or merge it there and develop it on their local machines. I mostly use Xcode, but there's also Intellij, iTerm, there is Visual Studio if you're using Visual Studio? Is it called Visual Studio? I don't remember. It's been so many years since I used a Windows laptop. Yeah, it is called Visual Studio. So yeah, there is Visual Studio. I remember running C++ code on my Windows machine there, but I don't really use it on Mac. But maybe some people do, I don't know. So this is for a more development area, but then if you use R, of course, you're going to be probably using RStudio, which is super widely used. There is also RStudio on a server, so you can run it from your browser. You don't have to, upgrade all the packages and everything on your laptop. But most people who use R actually have their local RStudio instance, and so do I. There, sometimes I need to run someone else's R code, or it's just easier to do some things in R, or I'm using it to knit a dashboard, like using RShiny to run it on the server and be able to have interactive charts using the height charts, for example. Important tool that I sort of mentioned already but haven't focused on it is Git and GitHub. Most of the companies I worked in had shared corporate GitHub repositories with the code of the product that they're working on, but also storing the code of your own research, your own analysis, your own software that you build for your teams, as well as different data pipelines. So GitHub is definitely very widely used, and I totally recommend you learning as much as you can in the beginning about GitHub, how to create repositories, what does it even mean to have a Git repository, how would you change the code, how would you download it to your local machine, how would you update it every time there is a change on the upstream or the master repository, how would you fork the repository, how would you contribute to a different repository, because that's what you will have to do at work. And that's also kind of a part that a lot of people, especially not from the software engineering background, are usually afraid of. Get familiar, get comfortable using GitHub, especially in the command line. It is easier actually in a command line than in the user interface that is available on the website. You can do a lot of things through the interface, but I recommend checking out the command line. Speaking of the command line, you will have to use your terminal. I think it's called, in Mac it's called just a terminal. I think in Windows it was command line, I'm not sure. Now Mac has changed from bash to zshell, so I'm using zshell with iTerm. It's a different flavor of a terminal, but there is also a local Mac terminal that you can use. Also get familiar with zshell and bash commands, how to create files, how to delete files, how to move from one directory to another. There are actually some pretty nice commands that you can learn, just like if you want to look up a calendar pretty quick, or if you want to calculate something super quick. Sometimes it's just easier to do it in a terminal rather than, going to a calculator or something like that. So definitely get familiar with the terminal. Don't be afraid of using it. You will have to use it at work, and it will make your life easier and more convenient knowing it. And I've already talked a little bit about RShiny, which is a way to create dashboards in R, and there are other tools that I use as a data scientist to create dashboards. They also depend quite a bit on the company, because there are free tools and open source tools that you can use to create dashboards, for example RShiny or Jupyter dashboards, which are not that widely used as I've noticed, but there are also very, very expensive licensed dashboarding tools such as Tableau or Looker or QlikView or RStudio from Google. So I have to use some of those as well, and it really depends on the company, because it's the company's leadership that selects the dashboard tool that they're gonna invest like millions, I think. actually millions. Some of them are really expensive licenses. So I did use Data Studio quite a lot, also Looker and a little bit of Tableau, and RShiny, because that one is kind of the most friendly for software developer. For most of them, you will have to learn their own ways of working, their own ways of creating and changing data sets, filtering, visualizing, and that will take quite a bit of time to learn as well. So I recommend checking out at least the videos about how to work with them. So watch the videos on how to create a Tableau or Data Studio dashboard. Try out the free options of the dashboard tools like RShiny or Jupyter Dashboard. So try out creating different dashboards yourself as well. And I actually haven't mentioned here yet, but there are also some analytics tools that you need to use to learn like the performance of different programs or different features that you're working on. So there is Kibana and Grafana. I've never, as a data scientist, created actually metrics there and looked at metrics there because they are more real-time. They're less focused on statistics and more focused on like counting like how many logins were at this specific minute of the day and how many errors were in this specific minute of the day. They're mostly widely used by software developers to understand the performance of the features that they're building and also to see whether there are any errors or anything that they need to act on really fast. But there's also some kind of learning curve on how to use those tools. And another big part is that you will have probably custom built tools within your company that you will have to get used to. And those are very different. It could be some kind of event monitor or A/B test analysis tool or whatnot. Really hard to predict because it depends on the maturity of the company, but also takes some learning curve. Now the tools that are more focused on like the work area. So sharing the work and sharing the analysis. I often use spreadsheets actually and Excel because that's easy and fast, and they do create the nicest charts to add them to the slides presentation or PowerPoint where you can link them. So when you change something in the Excel or the spreadsheet, it will actually reflect in the PowerPoint. Whereas if you need to do a PowerPoint, but you did your charts in Jupyter or in Python, you need to sort of copy paste them as an image. It's not as nice, it's not as adjustable. It really depends on how much time you want to spend, you know, making the most perfect visualization in the Python code or with R and ggplot or whatever tool you use. So often I just opt for Sheets or Excel. Also, if you have a Gmail, like Google account, then you can use Sheets and Slides. So just try it out. It's pretty easy. I do use quite a bit of pen and paper. I did really enjoy whiteboarding when I worked in the office. And also I enjoyed writing with like a marker on the paper because for me that's the easiest way to structure my head when there is some complex something that I need to figure out. So pen and paper, now it's my iPad and pencil where I also draw some diagrams or mind maps when I need to, you know, map out some complicated project. Also for storing information, a lot of companies use Confluence from Atlassian, where you can write reports, you can have different cards, you can just have general information and links from one page to another. Some companies now moving to Notion to do the same thing because they have a little bit different structure of databases and they have a little bit more different tools. Now for more organizational tools, email comes from either Gmail or Outlook. Pretty regular email. A lot of companies have messaging services like Slack. In one of my previous workplaces, we used HipChat. I don't know whether they're still alive, but it was weird. Yeah, HipChat is now also Atlassian, so the Confluence and Jira and all of this stuff. Jira and Trello and now Notion are used a lot for task management and agile project planning. So if you work in sprints with a team, they have like a Kanban board where they have the backlog, or here they have the backlog, then what's to do this week, what is in progress, what's stalled, and what's been done. So a lot of teams that I'm working with actually work with Jira or Trello in this way, but it's a little bit harder for data science teams, especially when the team is like the data scientists within the team are split between different product development teams, because you have to sort of have one Trello board or Jira for your data science team and also be a part of other boards for the teams that you're working with. To store information, often Google Docs are used, Slides again, Confluence, Coda, which is kind of new and pretty nice. Notion as well. I use Notion personally a lot to write scripts for my videos, to have like general admin of my life. There are also some easier checklists that you can use. I don't think they're widely used like as a thing in groups and teams in the companies, but just to do from Google or Todoist or to do with the Teodeo spelling. I use them when I need to just have like a little checklist of the things that I need to do in this specific day or in this specific week. I also sometimes use Trello for this case, but I noticed that just having like a very focused, very small to-do list is easier for me to browse around. The Connect tools will be your Zoom, Google Meet, BlueJeans, Microsoft Teams, or whatever tool the company will use to have the virtual meetings. There's also like virtual social networks for the company. So two companies where I worked at had the Facebook Workplace thing, where it's literally Facebook but for the company. It's good on one hand because you get like announcements and you see what other people are working on. That's a way to share for you, your analysis results or some global company announcement. But on the other hand, it's like Facebook and you have a lot of notifications. It's constantly sending you emails about like, this is the post that you missed. It kind of levels up your random anxiety and adds to the shallow work that you need to do apart from the deep work that you normally do, which is a part of your job description. So I'm a little bit on the fence with that. I haven't come up with a way to properly integrate this tool into my work routine. There are also some tools that are like your bureaucracy workplace management. Most commonly known as and used as Workday, but there are some alternatives. For example, in Sweden, it's like Fortnox or something, where you can see your pay slips, you can request your vacation, you can see your organizational chart and what's your role, who's your manager. You get like the documents that you sign sent there as well. So no way to learn it beforehand, but you will spend some time figuring out how to request your day off and what type of the day it has to be and stuff like this. On the same hand, if you're a consultant, there will be a different tool for you to sign in how many hours you work this week, and just, general bureaucracy stuff is also pretty heavy. There are different ways to do that. Some companies don't invest in the bigger tools and just do this on hand or in Google Sheets. Some companies have the special tools for that. There are also tools that you will have to use to, give feedback to your managers or to your peers and receive feedback. There are other tools that are used by different other functions. Like if you work with user researchers, then you will get exposed to the tools where they conduct research, calibrate their audience, look at the send out results of the service that they do, so you'll get to learn a little bit about those. There's so many different tools that the developers work on. They will need to use tools to deploy instances to Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services. They'll need to use tools to analyze the real-time performance of the things that they're working on. There are tools that you will get access to have the on-call duty, whether there is something wrong going on and there are some errors that you need to address and incidents that you need to come deal with. Really hard to predict. Definitely it's kind of a pretty big mental load, especially in the beginning, especially if you haven't worked in a corporate setting before. Tools to, learn things. There are some learning portals, there are some surveys, there's a lot. And it can be overwhelming, especially if you're just starting out, but don't worry, everyone's been through that, and I'm sure you can ask someone in your workplace. Just focus on the things, on learning the ins and outs and all the tips and tricks of the things that your primary role is related to. So SQL, all the tools that you need to use to access the data from the databases that you will work with, Python or R, IDEs, command line and GitHub, and everything else, and maybe dashboard tools as well. Yes, like creating dashboards and viewing dashboards. Everything else will come in easily and over time. Thank you for watching. Let me know if I missed something, because I feel like I might be missing some areas that have like super distinct tools that people can use. Have a nice day.